What's up, YouTubers? It's me, Johnny. Today's Wednesday. It's a nice chilly day in Shela, Guatemala. Last night I was watching some videos on, I was watching a video from Scott Mallon, and he's an American in Bangkok if you want to check out his channel. Shout out to American in Bangkok, Scott. He had mentioned, who did he mention? Nomad capitalist. And his video was titled, what was it called? I don't know, something like he's getting really, really negative on Thailand. But some of the views he's sharing, I tend to agree with. Basically, he was predicting that these lockdowns will last longer than people think. It's probably going to kill a lot of tourism in Asia and just in general. And in previous videos, he was saying they're going to make it harder and harder for tourists to live there. Not necessarily to visit there, but just to live there. And he was complaining about having to show, I don't know, they're going to make it so you have to show a vaccine card. I might be remembering that wrong. But anyways, it was interesting because he was talking about he's thinking when Thailand is more or less fully open, it could be that what they're going to do is they're not going to promote backpacking tourism or low-end tourism. They're going to try to X all that out, and a lot of the nightlife that people had previously enjoyed, they're going to try to cut all that out. Kind of like the way Las Vegas used to be in the 60s and 70s. Then in the early 80s, mid-90s, corporate America bought up most of the casinos. And then Las Vegas became family-friendly. And how that kind of changed everything. The whole vibe. I only mention that because I was watching a video today by Billy Blue, a.k.a. Cheap Charlie. Cheap Charlie's, I don't listen to him that much. He's not vlogging that much anymore. Some of his long-term views I don't particularly agree with, but Billy Blue was just saying just today, correcting me about Colombia. Apparently December 16th, I think he said. Again, I didn't verify this, but he said December 16th, Colombia is going to be instituting where you're going to have to show a COVID card to enter the country. And if you want to go to restaurants, you got to show a COVID card. Now, again, I live in Central America. I've been to South America. I don't know how the hell they're going to enforce that. Maybe at high-end restaurants or tourist areas, maybe they will. I don't know. Anyway, if anyone's in Colombia wants to leave a comment, have they heard that you are going to now need a COVID card? Now, I have my COVID card, so I can meet the requirements and fly in there. But I had wanted to be things normal. You just get on an airplane, you just fly there. And at worst, you had to have a COVID test. El Salvador just said you can come into the country, no COVID test, no COVID card, none of that stuff. I hope they stick with, excuse me. I hope they stick with that. I don't know what's going to happen, but because countries are backing down with what they said they were going to do, I think this, right or wrong, this COVID thing's going to be with us a long time. Anyways, getting back to Scott Mallon. Anyways, Billy Blue or Cheap Charlie was just saying that with all these new measures, he wasn't going to travel. My point is a lot of people aren't going to travel with all these requirements. Even if you could have your COVID card and you can meet them, it's just such a hassle. Anyway, Scott Mallon was saying basically the same thing, but in Thailand. And he's also making some points that I've been kind of thinking about, because the world's been shut down and the environment's been improving in a lot of these places, a lot of these countries really don't want tourists to come back and pollute their environment anymore. So Scott was suggesting that it's a possibility that only the wealthy will really be welcome in a lot of countries. There's no problem with that. I don't have a problem with that because it won't be the whole world. It'll just be some places. And some of these really pristine areas or areas that may not have been pristine that are coming back that are going to be really beautiful beaches, really pristine areas like in Thailand, you're going to have to pay an extra 500 or 1,000 or more just to visit them, just because they don't want a lot of people going there. Another thing Scott was saying that I tend to agree with is this is really out there. This is really outlandish. I don't know where he's getting this from. Maybe he's getting this from Nomad capitalists. But he thinks in the future, the United States and many Western countries are going to introduce, there's already an exit tax if you're really wealthy in America and you renounce your citizenship. This is not what I'm talking about. But he thinks in the future there's going to be something like an exit tax. Like if you want to travel and go overseas, you're going to have to pay $500 or $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to have the privilege of leaving the United States. And he thinks that's because basically many of the world elites don't really want the poor and downtrodden to really be polluting the environment with their cheap travel. So that was kind of interesting that he saw that. I think that's going to happen too. That's why I talk on this channel about having a residency or a second passport in a region that you really like, so you can use your local ID or your passport to travel in that local region. So if they do change the rules, you're already there. You'll probably be grandfathered in, and you may or may not go back to visit the United States. But when Scott was talking about more and more requirements for lower class or middle class people just to leave the country or just to be in compliance with all the rules and regulations, basically what he was saying was because people are leaving, and he basically said it in a roundabout way, because people are not paying taxes anymore, they're probably going to start charging you $2,500 if you live overseas a certain amount of time, just to make sure you're paying some tax, even though you're not. I tend to see that. Now, a lot of my viewers probably think that's not going to happen, but I think that's what's coming down the pike. So prepare yourself for that if that is the case. And a funny thing that he mentioned that I have never really mentioned on my channel, but he had mentioned a strategy for him. Now, he said for him and his family, they're going to stay in Thailand for a while. But he said if it ever got crazy, he would just become a nomad. And I think that's kind of interesting because there's a lot of what people call nomads traveling the world. And basically, he said that's what he would do. Like Nomad Capitalist says, just go where you're treated best. Like he just plain out said what I've been thinking for a long time. If things get really bad, I'm just going to travel. That will be my strategy. You won't be in a tax net. You can earn income online or live off your savings. And that will be one way to avoid all this. Because sometimes people say, well, what are you going to do, Johnny? Usually in emails. And I say, well, my strategy is because I'm single. And right now I don't want to be married. But because I'm single and because I have the ability now, one strategy is to either live in a region and live in that one region, which I don't like as much, or to live in a region and then travel within that region like a perpetual tourist, like the old PT literature, bank here, have a legal residency here, have a business maybe here or online, that kind of thing, and then just travel between your favorite countries. That's part of the reason why I like Central America, because you can easily hit Mexico. I think Mexico is going to become a big, big region. Like Nomad capitalists talk about this, other people talk about it. It's not just economic, it's just that you can live, work, and play in Mexico without very little requirements. Even if there are requirements, I don't think they're going to really be enforced. That's just my opinion. And they're hard to enforce. And even if they actually happen, it'll just be in certain parts of the country. Other parts of the country, it'll just be do whatever the hell you want. Live with the consequences. That's how it'll be. I mean, if you're watching the news, you can see, I hate saying this because some people think I'm full of shit, but you can quite easily go across a lot of these borders, no passport or nothing. If you have a boat, and even Scott Mallon was talking about, if you have a boat or a plane, he didn't come out and say it, but he said what I understand, and I don't want to talk about it too much, but if you have a private boat or airplane, or if you can travel by a private boat or airplane, or as he pointed out, if you can travel by bus and go overland, a lot of these border crossings don't mean shit. You don't have, well, if you want to, you can show a passport, but you don't need to. And I think that's kind of where the world's going. Like, there's going to be two classes of citizens who can travel legally, citizens who can't, and then like a third class, they're going to be traveling more low profile, knowing where the weak points are, if they don't have a passport or whatever. We're not at the point now, again, this video isn't about cryptocurrency or promoting it really, but we're at a point now where you can have US dollar or euro wallets, coins, and you don't really even need a bank account. Now, how long that will last before it's truly, truly regulated, I don't know. I suspect stable coins in a regulated or unregulated environment offshore will always be available. Now, if you don't put certain infrastructure in place, you might not be able to access them, but if you access them now, and if you keep one step ahead of these things, you will always have a wallet somewhere in the world you can access. And this, you can send these things now really cheap. Used to be that wasn't the case, but more and more of these wallets and stable coins are not in ETH. So you can send funds in dollars to another dollar wallet really cheap. Well, if you're aware of how all this works, you can buy airplane tickets, pay your rent, whatever you want, get cash, or have an ATM card. That's another thing Scott was talking about, was cards and how the government's going to be cracking down on those. I was surprised he was mentioning it because I don't think people are aware to the extent that the EU and the United States banking is now, well, it's always been alive and living color, but it's never been easy for the government to shut off your credit card or ATM account. It's never been easy for them to put pressure on banks to shut you out. And very soon it'll be much, much easier. They can really hone in on who they want to shut off. Like with what's going on in the United States with vaccinations, it could be like Eastern Europe and Western Europe, where it's going to get to the point you're not going to be allowed to have a bank account, you're not going to be allowed to have a job, and you're not going to be allowed to access health care or a grocery store, things like that. Now, 6 months ago, saying something like that would be pretty controversial, but now I think most people kind of see what's going to happen, whether we really want it or like it. But I do think parts of the world ain't going to do it. Parts of the U.S. probably won't do it. So you just have to decide where you want to live, work, and play. You're also going to have to decide how you earn income. People who have to earn income in a political jurisdiction or in a factory are really going to be SOL because their wages are going to be quite low. When I say their wages are going to be quite low, I see wages going up, but they're not going to go up as fast as what inflation is. And it'll kind of be like a modern day serfdom. I've seen quite a few videos talking about kind of this new serfdom we're going to have in, like, mostly in first world countries, in my opinion. A lot of this stuff can't really be enforced in third world countries because in the developing world or third world countries, people still live off the land. Like, they don't even have jobs. They don't even have bank accounts. They've never had them. They've never had a driver. Like in Guatemala, like, people have never had bank accounts, never had a driver's license, never had a passport. And they managed to get from point A to point B, whether it's the United States or any of the other countries, without any of those things. So in these countries, it's really hard to shut things down. Like, it's not impossible. It's just difficult. And then even if you wanted to, like, it wouldn't really do you any good. And then there's the wealthy who don't want to do these things anyways. Or maybe they do, but they don't want it to apply to them, so there'll be an exemption for them. There's one more thing I want to mention. I've been talking about this, how the economy's going from, like, inflation going up and the growth going up, how growth is going to kind of slow down and inflation is going to slow down, and how that's going to strengthen the dollar. Maybe not a lot, but a little bit. But it's going to strengthen the dollar and keep it up, I think. I don't know how long this will last. I think 3 to 6 months, maybe more. Probably more. But it may not be as strong as what I'm thinking, just not weak. A lot of people think the dollar's going to plunge. I just don't see it. Another news event that happened that I don't think people are paying attention to, and now this isn't the biggest deal, but Sri Lanka just came out where they might put exchange controls on their citizens. They're going to make it harder for citizens to send money in the country without being monitored. That's another thing Scott Mallon was talking about. The governments are going to be monitoring your money and your ATM cards like never before. I agree with that. Now, how these governments or how Sri Lanka is going to enforce, I don't know. But the article was alluding to the fact that Sri Lanka needs a lot of dollars to pay off their debts, and they want to be able to control the dollars coming in. Basically screwing in people who send in dollars and give them a bad rate is what I think. And it's just another clue that the Sri Lankan currency has been weak. It's probably going to get weaker. And a lot of these countries, their currencies, they're not going to collapse, but they're going to go down against the dollar, in my opinion. So even if inflation's up, you still might want to hold some dollars, because in a lot of these developing world countries, dollars, your dollars are going to go much, much further. Anyways, there's that. And then I just forgot something I'd heard either Scott Mallon or Cheap Charlie mention. I forgot now. But I just, like, Scott was really kind of like on a downer on how there really isn't a lot of freedom and liberty anymore. And people are going to have to, it surprised me, he said basically like Nomad capitalism, you're going to have to move to where you can get it, because a lot of these countries aren't going to choose it. The citizens of a lot of countries you might live in, they're going to choose to go down the path where you have to have your COVID card, your thing on your app. There was just a news article. I think it was in. I don't think it was in Taiwan. It was in one of the Asian countries where. No, I think it was in Europe. Yeah, it was in Italy. It was in Italy. Some grandmother, like 90 years old, couldn't get on a train to go somewhere because she didn't have her QR code on her phone. She had whatever her COVID card or whatever, if I understood the article right. But that wasn't enough. You have to have it on your phone. So like, it's particularly why I don't particularly want to live, work, and play in Europe. I know a lot of people do. It's just not for me. But because that's where a lot of these things are enforced. And even if it's a 90-year-old grandmother trying to get from point A to point B, they don't care. They're not letting you on the train if you don't have all your papers in order, not just your card, but your QR code on your phone and all that. And this is only increasing. Like in the Czech Republic, like there's another YouTuber I follow, Granin. He said like the Czech Republic's going to re-lock down. They're going to do like Austria. They're going to do like Lithuania. You're going to have a COVID card for almost everything you do, or proof of it. And it's just going to get ugly. Oh, another thing Scott was talking about was how hard it is to travel. And that's the point I thought I only felt. He's talking about how hard it is to travel on an airplane, all the rules, regulations, all the taking off your belt and shoes. They take away your water. They charge you $5 for water at the airport, all that kind of stuff. That's going to turn a lot of people off, so they're not going to travel. I was agreeing with him, and people say, why do you travel by overland so much? Is because I just don't like going to the airports unless I have to. Like when I go to South America or to Asia, you have to get on an airplane, but it's such a pain in the neck now just to do all that. And if your paperwork at the airport, it's not really governments, but if the choke points to airlines, they enforce all this. If your papers aren't right according to them, not necessarily what the government says that you're flying into, they won't let you on the plane, so you just lost your money. You could be stuck at the airport for 3, 4, 5 days, and then, you have to buy a new ticket, and it could be really expensive, and you never know. And then if you're in transit, a lot of these airline tickets, like you have two layovers. If in any of those layovers something happens and they don't like your paperwork, you're stuck there just in the middle of nowhere, not getting to where you want to be. If that's a high cost area, you're just stuck paying a lot of money just to live there. I mean, that's already happened to people. Anyways, there's something Scott had mentioned I forgot. Anyways, if you want to check out some of his latest videos, he's not as enthusiastic about things going back to normal. Whereas Billy Blue, a.k.a. Cheap Charlie, thinks things are going to go. I don't think things are really going to go back to normal. In some parts of the world, yeah, but in a lot of the first world countries, I don't think so. I think it's just going to get more and more expensive to live in these first world countries. It's going to be more and more expensive to comply with the rules and regulations. And I don't, if you need to live there, that's cool. Just live where you can live and comply with the rules. But it's the rules, even under Republican states in the United States, are getting more and more onerous. I don't care for it. And I don't really see that let up any. So anyways, the latest news I heard is Colombia now, before they're letting you fly in without a COVID card, and my understanding was even a test, except for maybe you had to have a test from the country you left or something. But now they change all that. I guess after December 16th, you're going to have proof of your COVID card just to enter the country and just to go to restaurants and things like that. So if they're going to do that, imagine other things they're going to do, especially if they can get away with it. I hope they stop it, but we'll have to wait and see. If any of the viewers have heard about that, leave it in the comments. And more my strategy probably is going to be kind of, I hate to use the term nomad, but traveling around, not living in one place. Again, some people criticize me, but I have a hard time staying in one place. And so it suits me. For other people, it won't suit them. I would suggest you find a place in the world you like. You'll probably have to get a legal residency. That's another thing Scott was talking about. More and more countries are going to make it harder for you to stay as a tourist. You're going to have to get legal residencies, and the cost of obtaining those is going to go up, not just in money, but in time. That's another thing I don't like about some of these countries. They're making it expensive in time and money just to comply, just to stay there a long time. And for me, if they don't, like Scott said, if Thailand don't want me, he's just going to leave. That's just like how I feel. If a country don't want me, I'm not going to get mad about it. I'm just leaving. So Anyways, that's it for now. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and have a great day wherever you are in the world.